I can't believe I'm saying this, but what a brilliant looking car. It's like being in a very dark dream.
Now, sometimes American-built cars can get a pretty bad reputation for build quality, but I tell you one thing Americans can build is a bloody good V8.
Okay, I'm going to be completely honest with you here. I went into the research and production of this video, and I think probably in a very similar way to maybe you, assuming that this thing would just be a mess of terrible build quality issues and reliability nightmares. See, because as the internet often claims, cars made in the US struggle when it comes to reliability and quality control. Not to mention, Chrysler often leads the pack in regards to complaints surrounding dodgy after-sales support. Yet the 300 SRT has one of the most loyal and passionate fan bases out there. So do we believe the negative internet hype, or do we listen to the, let's be honest, potentially biased fans and owners? Are these any good or not? And should you ever consider buying one? Look, we're going to answer all of those questions and delve into so much more, but let's kick things off with what goes wrong with the exterior. First of all, if you notice some inconsistencies in the panel gaps, unfortunately, that is to be expected. We're not talking, Tesla levels of terrible, shoddy build quality, but expect some inconsistencies all over the car. Actually, this is something we noticed when researching through all of the owners groups and forums and customer satisfaction surveys, all that sort of stuff. And a massive thank you to everybody that helped us research this video. But there seems to be a massive inconsistency when it comes to build quality and reliability. See, there are owners like Colin that owns this one. Now, Colin used to be a mechanic and he has owned dozens and dozens of cars. This is arguably the best built and most reliable car he has ever owned. And there are so many owners out there just like Colin. But then on the flip side, there are thousands and thousands of owners out there that have just suffered from stupid build quality issues. Things like the boot latch actuator sensor playing up to the point that it sends the car alarm going off randomly. Super embarrassing. Then other owners have reported problems with the windows. Now the issue here, it can sometimes be the motor, or it can be the plastic parts in the window regulator. They just fail, and then the windows just fail to go up or down anymore. Now to fix this requires the internal door card to come off, and you are going to need some spare parts. However, this then raises a whole bunch of other issues, which we'll get into shortly. Now, this next one, it's not so much a fault as such, it's just something you need to be aware of. These are a serious performance car, and they also weigh a whole bunch. You're looking at nearly 2 tons. And when you combine speed with weight, generally that accelerates the appetite for consumables. It's important to understand that high quality premium performance rubber is going to be expensive, and the same can be said for the Brembo brakes. However, when it comes to the brakes, quite a few owners mention that you should look into aftermarket options because they've found that quite often, not only are they more affordable, they tend to perform just as well and they last longer. And another thing that you might be better off buying aftermarket are the rims, because guess how much a genuine 20-inch forged rim is? $2,900, nearly $3,000 for each wheel. Imagine gutter rashing one of those. Oh. Now, pricing for these here in Australia currently ranges from about $20,000 to $130,000. And yeah, that is a huge price range, but you've got to remember, this generation existed here in Australia for 9 years over 2 iterations and primarily 2 trim specs. Although there were also a couple of special editions to keep the range spicy. And look, obviously post-update and higher trim spec cars are going to be asking a premium, but honestly, fair enough, because they feature a whole host of upgrades, which we'll cover shortly. But look, if you do need all of the specific details, as well as all of the common problems written out so they're really easy to refer to, head to ReDriven.com and check out the free 300 SRT cheat sheet. It's going to answer all of your questions. Now, here's a fun fact for you. Did you know that when we're talking to post-update cars, Australia was the only market to get a 300 SRT, because internationally, Chrysler focused more on luxury vehicles and they left all the performance stuff for Dodge. And obviously this generation of 300, like the previous one, has been available with a 6-cylinder engine, but the vast majority of used examples here feature the 6.4 litre V8. So for this video, we're just going to be focusing on the SRTs. We'll get to the 6-cylinder ones down the track. Now, here's a hot tip. If you're trying to identify between a pre or a post-update car, just check the top of the front grille. Pre-update features a little bit more girth to the top of the grille. Post-update, girth is gone. But look, either pre or post-update, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but what a brilliant looking car. The reason I can't believe I'm saying it is because when these first came out, The looks did nothing for me. I genuinely didn't like them. Look, I don't know if it's just my tastes maturing or maybe the design of the car is just aging incredibly well, but I always thought they were trying too hard to look all tough and menacing. It was like the car version of those guys that get super jacked at the gym to try to hide and cover their insecurities. I felt like that's what these look like, but now I love the look of this. Actually, you know what? I think the main reason that these now grab me is because of the police, but in a really good way. For those that aren't watching this in Australia, these are often used as highway patrol cars. And tell you what, nothing adds credibility to a car like drenching it in police lights and graphics and aerials. However, this brings us to a bit of an unfortunate behind the scenes story when it comes to this shoot. See, prior to today, we had actually booked 2 separate 300 SRTs to film, but how would the police put this? Police report kind of way. They relinquished any responsibility for forward momentum due to a catastrophic failure of critical componentry. And I suppose that then brings us to what goes wrong with the interior. First of all, and interestingly, we saw this on the Jeep Grand Cherokee SRT video as well. The link for that video is down below. If the car you're looking at has the carbon fiber trim, so here in Australia, that'll be the high spec SRT model, expect all of the carbon trim to start peeling and coming off, not just on the doors either, everywhere. Now, annoyingly, owners have reported that the replacement parts are getting bloody expensive, and even the times that their dealerships have fixed the issue of peeling carbon fiber trim just comes back. Actually, the record that we came across when doing the research was that one owner had all of his carbon fiber trim replaced 8 times. And a similar thing can be said for the leather on the dashboard and even the armrests. Plenty of owners have had issues with it starting to peel and just lift off. Also, some owners mentioned that the interior plastics, they're becoming a bit brittle. Best case scenario, they get a bit rattly. Worst case scenario, they can just break. Actually, a few owners have had an issue where the little cubby hole on the passenger side door where the window switch is, the base of it can just break and fall away. The replacement part's about $118, or you could get it 3D printed or just buy a part from the wreckers, which you might have to do because getting parts can be a challenge. Again, we're gonna expand on that soon. Actually, just on rattles and weird noises, a few owners have complained about a squeak coming from the passenger side dashboard. The squeak actually isn't from there, it's from the 10mm bolt that's just behind or below the A-pillar of the car. Super easy to fix, 10mm socket, it'll fix it up. Jump on the owners groups and forums for tutorials, really easy fix. Now, some of the older models can suffer from, let's call it chattering sunroof. It's where this section here, the little pads that stop it from chattering, just wear away. Again, really easy fix. Just get some of those padded furniture slides and stick them on. Again, go to the owners groups and forums for the tutorials. Again, really easy fix, very, very cheap. However, by far the biggest issues with these interiors surrounds electronics and the Uconnect infotainment system. Let's start with the electronics first. Basically, if you're in the market for one of these, try every single function and then try it again and then try it again for a third time. And I mean every single function, just to make sure it works. Owners have reported everything from the seat adjustment and heating and cooling failing, window switches failing, lighting issues, certain modules and ECUs just failing, HVAC or air conditioning functions not working. Basically, anything with electricity running to it has issues associated to it potentially. And I say potentially because remember, there's every chance that the car's going to have no issues at all. It's just a little bit of a gamble. Also, just on the air conditioning as well, smell for any musty odors because moisture can build up on the evaporative core. Now, Chrysler have released a disinfectant or a detergent to clean this up, so if the car smells like wet dog, just get that done. And then onto the bloody Uconnect infotainment systems, and I'm pretty sure the U in Uconnect stands for useless. Now, I should mention that post 2017 cars are going to have the 4th generation of Uconnect, and that does support Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, and it is apparently a big improvement over the previous generations, but it's still a bit shit. Now, some of the earlier systems can maybe have decent levels of phone connectivity modified into them, but plenty of owners out there just recommend binning the original system and fitting quality aftermarket gear. But look, if you're determined to stick with the factory system, it's pretty safe to assume you're going to experience some Bluetooth connection issues, like just blatant dropouts. Screens can delaminate or lock up or turn blue or black. Functionality issues are pretty common, like the entire system just fails to turn on for about 20 minutes. Even the satellite navigation, depending on where you're watching this, can be near impossible to get updates for. Look, honestly, of all of the infotainment systems that we've reviewed on ReDriven, it doesn't matter if it's in a Jeep or a Fiat or a Chrysler, these things are honestly up there with some of the very worst. They're pretty much equally as bad as some of the early Toyota systems. Yeah, that bad. Although a quick tip, if you put the car into reverse and the screen seems to have a bit of a tantrum, that might not actually be Uconnect. That might just be the connections on the reversing camera itself. Get on the owners groups and forums. There's tutorials on how to reconnect it properly and it should fix the problem. Now, something else that might be a bit of a challenge to face when it comes to these interiors is just the overall design and vibe in here. If you're looking at used examples under $50,000, yeah, this interior does the job. It's nice enough. But if you're looking at used examples over $90,000, even with the leather and Alcantara trim and carbon fiber bits and pieces everywhere, for over 90,000 bucks, this is a pretty underwhelming interior, I'm sorry. And look, obviously no one is buying a 300 SRT for the interior atmosphere, but if I'm spending more than $90,000 on a car, I'd be expecting much higher levels of materials and just fit and finish. But look, focusing on the positives, it's such a comfortable interior, space-wise really good, ergonomics are spot on, and there's loads of adjustability. These seats are fantastic. You could spend hours and thousands of kilometers in these and be totally comfortable. But it is just a sea of hard plastic blacks in here. In fact, Colin, that owns this car, has upgraded the atmosphere of the interior with these excellent kind of quilted leather floor mats. That has made a massive difference. Otherwise, it's like being in a very dark dream. Now, I should mention that the higher spec SRT, as well as the leather and Alcantara and carbon fiber trim, it does come with a whole host more stuff than these SRT cores. But as it should, it was $10,000 more when it was brand new, and it still asks a premium on the used market. But the 19-speaker Harman Kardon sound system is absolutely epic. It has adaptive dampers, which fixes one of the common complaints about the driving experience. We'll get to that bit in a second. And it has heated and cooled cup holders. How cool is that? Also, just be aware, the SRT cores, these ones, they do come with a really good range of stuff, but some of them might miss out on some really basic features that you'd expect, like a reversing camera or maybe even heated seats. But again, if you do need all the specific details on all of this stuff, ReDriven.com, it's all on the cheat sheet. And then in terms of actually using the interior as far as practicality goes, not too bad. So you've got a twin tier glove box there. You've got a spot here which you'd assume is for your phone, but it doesn't quite fit if you want to close the trapdoor. And also the trapdoor just feels a bit cheap and nasty. I think this spot's supposed to be for your phone, but again, it doesn't really fit properly there. You've got a couple of cup holders here with little fingers for small pretentious coffees like double macchiato, ristretto, something like that, and a spot for playing cards there. A little cubby bin under the armrest with a removable shelf, and your SD card input and USB and auxiliary inputs there. Door bins, but they're a bit shallow, so if you've got a tall, oddly shaped water bottle, they can fall over, and a spot for sunglasses just up there, but again, just feels a little bit on the cheap and nasty side in terms of plastics. But also with the features, these sun visors have a party trick. First of all, this section can slide out, and then this whole section can slide back and forth as well. How cool is that? Why don't more manufacturers do that? Brilliant. But a positive when it comes to all of the hard plastics is that plenty of owners reported that these interiors are incredibly resilient to abuse. Even the ex-highway patrol cars, you might see a few little scuffs and whatnot from where their accessory belts hit the bolsters of the seats. But even then, the bolsters still hold their form really nicely. You can't say that about many, many other cars. And yeah, interiors are just tough. Also, aside from the fact that these are bloody rapid cars, the police do need to keep their OH&S department happy, so they also have to be pretty bloody safe. And they are. In fact, many of these will feature loads of active safety systems like radar-guided cruise control and autonomous emergency braking, plus all of this and more. Oh, I nearly forgot to mention as well, like all cars, these come with windscreen wipers, but there's a really wonderful way to upgrade the windscreen wipers.
Are you tired of streaky, squeaky wipers? Confused by wipers that are hard to buy and even harder to fit? Sick of paying extortionate prices for wipers? Well, introducing Wipertech. Purchase wipers from the leisure of your home and have them delivered straight to your door. Not only are they a piece of cake to fit, they fit perfectly, and you can now enjoy streak and squeak-free wipering all day. Plus, use our code and get 15% off your purchase.
And as a massive thank you to Colin for lending us his SRT, he's going home with a free set of these bad boys, and if you want a set, click the link below. Now in the back seat, I'm exactly the same height as the star of the movie 300, Gerard Butler. This is in my driving position, and let me just say that if you've been arrested and thrown in the back of one of these, what a lovely place to be. be. Seats are so comfortable, and they actually have some lateral support for when the cops are drifting through roundabouts. Actual seat comfort, squidge is really, really good. Good amount of knee room. You kind of recline back. It's a relaxing place to be. Also, I thought with the design of the car that it would feel a bit claustrophobic with all the dark headliner and sort of smallish windows, but it's just not. It's really nice. And then as far as features and practicality in the back seat, you've got your own air vents, you've got USB power outputs, you've got 2 map pockets, you've got door bins that are great because you can actually get to them even if you have legs. There's a pull down armrest with even more cup holders, little spot to collect life's filth and dust and whatnot in the doors, and that's about it. I'm genuinely impressed at just how comfy this back seat is. Great place to be. And then in the boot, as you'd expect, a huge amount of space, but also the opening aperture is really good. The load lip here isn't too bad, and the seats fold flat, so you've got even more room. Super impressed with practicality back here. Okay, let's be honest here. As car people, we all love to tinker with our cars, often to a point where we can't leave the bloody things alone. But this brings us to our new mates at Automotive Superstore, where you can shop from over 400,000 products, including car care, infotainment systems, audio, dash cams, lights, brakes, suspension, 4x4 gear, plus a whole lot more. Plus, to make life even easier, if you don't know the specific part that you're after, just type in your reg show and it will display all of the parts and accessories suited for your car. Best of all, you can do that completely online from the comfort of your lounge room because they ship Australia-wide. So if your car needs something fixed or upgraded, or maybe you're just in the market for a gift, hit the link below and shop from a huge range of products from Automotive Superstore. Okay, so what can go wrong when it comes to driving it? Well, the big one that you'll read all the time, but this is on the SRT Core, not the high-spec SRT, is just how harsh the ride quality can be. See, on really, really harsh surfaces, it can feel a bit crashy, and that just detracts from what is otherwise quite a refined and premium feeling ride. And look, obviously it's got to be a compromise, because when a performance car weighs this much, if you soften up the suspension to make the ride nice, well then it's just going to pitch and roll through the corners. But then if you want to handle really, really positively, then you've got to have firm suspension, and you end up with a ride quality like this. Now obviously the higher spec SRT avoids this issue because it has adaptive dampers, but on the flip side, that's going to cost you thousands of dollars more. Plus, according to the owners groups, there are plenty of great aftermarket options that can both sort this ride quality out while also enhancing the handling, and that's brilliant. Now, obviously this glorious engine sounds amazing, but for some people, it's still not enough. If it has an aftermarket exhaust fitted, please make it a good one. See, too many dodgy backyard operators just cut the center muffler out, and look, yeah, it's going to be louder, but not in a good way, and it's also going to boom in the interior. It's going to make it sound like you're sitting inside a subwoofer enclosure, and that is not fun. Also, Chrysler issued a recall a couple of years ago because apparently even in standard form, hang on a sec, because even in standard form, apparently it was too loud. However, owners that have had that recall seen to have then complained that their Chrysler 300 SRT is all of a sudden very quiet and flies under the radar, and that's not what these cars are about. Also, a few owners mentioned that their steering is getting a little bit squeaky. Look, chances are this is the lower steering shaft seal. It just needs a little bit of lube, fixes it right up. But look, besides the negatives, what an epically wonderful car this is to drive. I do have a warning for you though. When you're test driving one, just be aware that it is one of those cars that is so instantly enjoyable to drive that you'll very quickly forget, or maybe your brain will choose to ignore some of the common issues and problems. But look, I love that this thing drives exactly the way it looks like it would drive. It's tough and no nonsense, but at the same time, just the right amount of refined. But it's entertaining and just fun all of the time. Look, not that anyone would ever cross-shop one of these with a Volkswagen Golf R, but even though a Golf R would probably leave this thing for dead in pretty much any scenario, especially through some corners, a Golf R just feels like a normal Golf unless you absolutely up the thing for the rent. Whereas in this, it just feels alive all of the time. It almost feels like you're just barely controlling an explosion of forward performance, and you're just holding on for dear life constantly, even if you're reverse parking it. And best of all, if you're watching this from Australia and you're looking at buying a white one, hypothetically, if you were to stick a couple of giant aerials on the back of it, there might be a chance that those around you will assume you're an unmarked highway patrol car. And I do know from experience that that is one of the all-time most fun driving experiences you'll ever have. But look, before we all go falling madly in love with this driving experience, we do need to talk about mechanically what could go wrong. Well, unfortunately, I can't talk to you about that because I'm not a qualified mechanic. But you know who is? It's Jim.
Now, mechanically speaking, good news here, they actually are pretty reliable. And that's because these 6.1 litres are a pretty simple engine. They don't have variable valve timing and they don't have MDS, which is their multi-displacement system. That's just where it cuts out a cylinder when it's not required. So yeah, there is much less to go wrong. One of the things that can go wrong though is hydraulic lifter failure, which is a pretty widely reported issue. What happens there is the roller on the bottom of the lifter, just basically the bearing fails and then the lifter destroys itself on the camshaft. Although it's not hugely common in the 6.1, it's more common in cars that are ex-highway patrol cars, which is the case here in Australia. And the issue here is because these cop cars are idling for long periods of time, those roller bearings in the lifters just don't get adequate lubrication and then the bearings just fail. And this is what actually happened to the two cars we had booked in prior to this. They were both cop cars and they both had a very similar problem. So yeah, maybe don't buy an ex-cop car. Now, oil consumption is a known issue in these as well, although it's not a severe problem, but you will have to top it up between services. And speaking of services, every 45,000 Ks on these things, they're due for spark plugs. Now, if you don't know, these Hemi engines have 16 spark plugs. So if you're doing good quality spark plugs like an NGK brand plug, you can expect to pay just for plugs about $650 just for your spark plugs. Other things to look out for are just age-related issues here and high mileage problems. They do suffer some oil leaks, but overall, yeah, pretty good. Now the transmissions in these, the NAG1 transmission, that's used in a bunch of Dodge, Chrysler and Mercedes products. Overall, they're okay. They do have an issue where the electrical connector into the gearbox leaks oil, not a huge problem. They can also have some torque converter clutch issues where they just get a shudder in them. And they can also have some valve body issues. Now, some of those problems with the torque converter and the valve body, they can be a little bit expensive, but the good news here is this gearbox is pretty well supported in terms of spare parts and a good knowledge base too. And the same can be said for the whole driveline really. And there is a really good community with these cars as well. There's plenty of help out there where you need it. Now, aside from cop cars, other versions of these you should avoid are the ones that are heavily modified because some of the mods on these are just terrible. Yeah, they can produce a lot of power, but in terms of reliability, when they've been heavily modded, they're way less reliable. And avoid the ones rolling on 20s, they just look ridiculous.
Now there's another potential issue we need to talk about here, and it's unfortunately Chrysler's shocking reputation when it comes to after-sales support, especially if you need any spare parts. In fact, one owner that we spoke to has owned 3 of these and loved them all, until he needed a new front bar and grille because someone reversed into him. Guess how long it took Chrysler to get him a new front bar and grille? 4 months. That is ridiculous. And the problem is, plenty of other owners have reported much the same. And remember, not only do Chrysler not make these anymore, the brand itself has left Australia. And look, yes, Chrysler's associated brands like Jeep, Alfa Romeo and Fiat are still operating, and they state that existing owners will still be able to get parts and service support from the existing dealer network. But Stellantis, the conglomerate that owns Chrysler, still reports some of the very lowest customer satisfaction ratings when it comes to after-sales service and support. As brilliant as these things can be, are they just a bit too risky when the company that makes them could just let you down so terribly? And anyway, if you want a large rear-wheel drive sedan, there are plenty of other options out there, conveniently from companies that still exist in Australia that seem to value their customers a whole lot more than Chrysler. If a V8 is a must, there's the BMW M5 and AMG E63. Open up the possibility of powerful 6s and you have the Kia Stinger GT, the Genesis G70, and even the Toyota Mark X, which you might discount because it's an import, but I mean, surely accessing parts for that couldn't be any harder than getting them for this. And obviously you have the homegrown heroes that technically also don't exist anymore, like the SS Commodore and various HSVs, and the various Ford Falcon XR8 derivatives. But short of nostalgia and ignoring buying one as an investment opportunity, we argue that the 300 SRT actually offers superior bang for your buck. Which is why if you're in the emotional and financial position to commit to one of these and you find a flawless example, it's a tentative yes from us. You should buy one. Just know what you're getting yourself into, because while it can be an utterly brilliant car, the company that made it might let you down. However, what if I told you there was another V8 powered large sedan available for this sort of money, and it arguably offers the best build quality in the business from a brand that has been topping customer satisfaction surveys for over 30 years, and parts are at Toyota Corolla levels of availability, not that you'll ever need them. So surely you'd be tempted to buy one of these instead, wouldn't you? Or why wouldn't you? Or would you still just buy one of these? Let us know in the comments. See you next time. Oh, also just, and spare parts are at Toyota Corolla levels of topping customer satisfaction surveys for 30 years. Flies, yeah. Actually, you know,